My guest on Superliminal today is the delightful Sarita Cameron, otherwise known as Sarita Sol. Now, I've done some work with Serita in the last 3.5 years, a couple of her live online events to heal the father wound and heal the mother wound. And I've also been to one of her in-person 4 or 5 day intensive retreats at her fabulous retreat centre in France known as Solhenge. And I tell you, it has made such a phenomenal difference to my life and to my world. And the reason I'm mentioning that is because we discuss it in the conversation in terms of how every single one of us needs to heal our trauma and illuminate our shadow, because what we discuss is the nature of the matrix on all 3 levels. It's not just in the physical that's keeping us trapped, because collectively we've agreed to it, and that's really provoking. It even provokes me a little bit, but it's true, and Sarita does a great job of explaining why that's the case in the conversation. We also look at what it means to be sovereign and how important that is, and then also again talking about healing our trauma and illuminating our shadow with the immortal, ineffable, inimitable, infinite light that we're made of. Now, I bring that up because it's really, really important that we understand what's going on, so we learn how to navigate this insane world that we live in, that since COVID has become even more crazy by design. But we are powerful, immortal, creator beings. But to be able to create the reality that we truly desire, we first have to heal our own trauma. And I discuss my own experience of that in the conversation. Because here's the thing, every single one of us are so busy creating what we don't want, but we don't realize that that's what we're doing. And we shine a spotlight on that in the conversation. But yeah, I'll stop there. And before we jump into the conversation, please do subscribe, comment and like. It does really help to the algorithm to share the conversation with other great people like you who would really benefit from it. I will also put a pinned comment on the video with a link to share the video, and I'd be so grateful if you could share. If you enjoy the conversation, please do share it with one other person who you feel could benefit. But anyway, get comfortable, enjoy the conversation, and I will see you in a second. Okay, everyone, welcome back to Superliminal. And today I am so excited to have one of my favorite people on the show, the wonderful Sarita Cameron, or Sarita Sol, as you'll probably find online. Now, as I've said in the previous intro video, I've known Sarita for about 3-4 years, a little bit more actually now. And I've done some incredible work with her to heal some deep trauma and wounds, both ancestral and personally as well, over time. And I was blessed to be able to go to a retreat about a 1.5 years ago now at Sarita's wonderful place in France called Solhenge. So yeah, I've been super excited to get her on the show. It's been a long time coming. We've been trying to set this up for a while, but as they say, the best things are always worth waiting for. So Sarita, thank you ever so much for joining me on Superliminal, and it's really an honor to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me, and it's really great to see what you're doing since you left my place. Things have changed for you quite a lot, haven't they? So yeah, it's wonderful to see you doing this podcast. It's you're obviously in your niche.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's just wonderful. I mean, it's an interesting one because I've had a lot of people say to me since I started this, why on earth don't you make this your full-time vacation and actually run it as a thing? But unfortunately, because of the nature of the content and the conversations that we have, I've already been struck off twice. I'm not very sponsorship friendly, unfortunately. Maybe at some point in the future I could find a way to actually make that work, but it's not about the money for me. As I've said many times in separate videos, this isn't about the money for me. It's all about getting the wisdom of incredible people like yourself, Sarita, who can see beyond the physical, who are very powerfully tuned into their non-physical senses, to help people on an everyday basis who are
not necessarily struggling to get by, but they feel from the heart here there's more to life than just what we see with the physical, but they don't quite know how to embody that and how to integrate that. And that's what these conversations are all about, is sharing the great wisdom that people like you have, so that people can take that away and actually do something with it, to not just make their lives better, but more importantly, to reconnect with their own magic, which is what we're all made of at the end of the day. So, yeah, it's been a while since we've spoken. So tell me what's going on at Solhenge, your retreat center at the moment. And then also as well, I'd love you to share your perspective on, so we'll start off small, the state of the world, and where humanity's heading.
Yeah, well, in a funny way, though, what I'm really getting into now kind of goes hand in hand with the state of the world. So in the last year and a half, I launched a 2-year training for shamanic practitioners. And it's just been the most amazing experience watching people kind of blossom into their superpowers. And I think that one of the reasons why the course is so popular is because I think that we really need shamans in the world now, because things are changing. And the role of a shaman is to be able to access non-ordinary and ordinary realities simultaneously. And I think what's happening is that human beings are being forced now to acknowledge that there is something more than the material realm that we've been indoctrinated into acknowledging as the only thing, let's say. So, your question, what am I doing and how does it, reflect the state of the world? It's the same thing. I just think that we now need more shamans, more healers, more people in the spiritual, road, and in business as well, in corporations, in every aspect, in school, in schooling, in health, all of it. We need people who can access energy, and that's because all matter comes from energy. So what we're seeing now is the breaking apart and the destruction, if you like, of people's perceptions of reality as material only. And that actually needs to happen in order to break the mind control and the indoctrination that's been going on. And when people wake up and they realize that they're a soul having they're an infinite soul having a finite experience in a material body, not just a material body, that's when they start to expand their consciousness. Because when you're materially led, your consciousness is quite constricted. So people turn their awareness inwards. And when you realize that you're a soul, your consciousness expands. And as it expands, you open up and you have the offering of more perceptions available to you. And it's only in that opening and expansion that people will begin to see how this reality functions, because it has specific rules. And when you can see that there are energetic rules that govern the material realm, you can start to work with them. And when you start to work with them, not only does your life become more expansive, easier, more fulfilling and enjoyable, you get to choose what your life is. You also start to perceive the true nature of this reality, which is a matrix. And I believe that once we really can understand how all of the rules work in this matrix, we will then have the choice to expand our awareness beyond it and even potentially live beyond it, should we choose. And it also won't be such a kind of suffering realm. So people may not want to leave the matrix once they understand that it is a matrix, and they can enjoy their experience here through their own choices rather than unconscious controlled choices, which is what the majority of people are living their lives through at the moment. Did that all make sense?
100%, because this is one of the key things that, like, for example, today I'm doing some work I was doing some work just before this recording with a client of mine who's the chief exec of a mid-size company. He's very spiritual, very, very connected to his heart. And one of the things that he wants to do is to grow his venture, but in a way that really makes the world a better place. It's not just about the money for him. The money's is absolutely a byproduct of him showing up from the heart and aligning his team from that. And I bring that up because what you shared there about our perspective about this reality is a key element of a little training video I'm doing for him, and it's to show that we see with our physical senses at best 0.0, is it 3 zeros, 0.0003 of the known energy spectrum, and that's the known energy spectrum. But when it comes to creating, manifesting, goal achievement and whatnot, what we forget is that we are electromagnetic and photonic beings who are transceivers. So we're always broadcasting and receiving whatever frequency that we're on. And people often say, well, that's a load of nonsense. It doesn't work. I'm like, so what are you I always say, like, what are you complaining about the most at the moment? Well, this, that, and the other. How much are you getting of that in your life? Oh, actually, quite a lot. I said, well, there's a reason for that, because everybody's a creator, everybody's a manifester, but 99.9% of people, because they don't understand how the matrix works, what they're doing is creating an abundance of what it is that they don't want. So I love that you've shared that, Sarita, because it absolutely, I think it's such a powerful foundational construct that everybody needs to understand. And in centuries and millennia gone by, it was an integral part of our existence. But obviously, this reality, and actually the non-physical reality as well, I'm beginning to really see and understand, has also been co-opted as well. In terms of the matrix actually extends beyond just the physical, but we need to understand what those rules are, who constructed it, how it works, and most importantly, how we can reconnect with the magic and the infinite essence of our infinite creative essence and our love and our creativity, to be able to navigate that. As you said, whether people want to stay in it or whether not, at least you're armed with the information to be able to do whatever you want to do with that. And for me, Sarita, it begs another question in terms of some of my close friends, I make it sound like I've got loads of close friends. I have a small handful of really amazing close friends, including my new partner, who I mentioned off camera, who's on exactly the same frequency. The general feeling with us is that in this last 3-4 years in particular, probably since 2020 when all the COVID stuff kicked off, there seems to be like a really big acceleration, both in terms of the craziness in the world, but people's awakening. Even people who've been fast asleep seem to have like one eye half open, at least a bigger proportion than there was before. From your experience, Sarita, given that you've been on this journey for some time, maybe you could share with us how you've seen that shift over the years and your perspective on where things are at now in terms of the human awakening process and how that impacts the collective human consciousness.
Yeah, okay, another big question. So I think the main thing to understand really in terms of witnessing what's going on is that we are a collective species, and the matrix that I speak of, we are co-creating. So we're living in a consensus reality. It's just that the nefarious agenda, if you like, which is the dark polarity that exists on this planet and which expresses through various systems and agendas, both kind of human agendas and also non-human agendas as well, is actually only influencing our creative potential. So it's us who've created this consensus reality matrix. And I think what we're witnessing is, it feels like a kind of a wave, it's like in 2020, we saw a lot of people wake up, and then a certain amount of them went back to sleep again because the awakening was too tricky to handle. Because what really awakening means is taking full responsibility for your entire human experience. So that's me taking responsibility if there's a war in another country, or if there's poverty somewhere, or people are being rude or unkind. I need to take responsibility for all of that, because it's a co-creative consensus. So whenever I see something in the field of my reality, that means that I must be holding a vibrational match to that within me somewhere. So, and I think that's the trick of understanding what's going on. And, you know, if you've ever, I mean, some of your viewers may have looked at the Power versus Force book by David Hawkins. And in his map of consciousness, you have avatars at 1,000 and shame at 30, and obviously all of the levels in between. But what he demonstrated from his book is that one avatar, or even somebody who's resonating at a frequency of 450, let's say, that one person can change the frequency of millions of people. And in the case of an avatar, something like 4 billion people. I can't remember the exact figures. But if one person can escalate their internal frequency, because we are a collective species, that in turn affects everyone and everything else. And so what I'm seeing playing out is a certain sector of people who have recognized and acknowledged this truth, that reality is created from the depths of their internal beingness. And then I'm seeing other people who've woken up but are still in a type of victim, perpetrator, savior system. And so they go back to sleep again because it's too much effort, or it's too frightening, or it seems too impossible to take responsibility for what's going on out there. So I'm kind of watching this wave, and I do agree with the premise that a lot of spiritual teachers have out there, that there has been, and we're actually in the middle of, a splitting of this earth. So there's a co-creational consensus not to wake up, and that's one timeline. And there's a co-creational consensus to wake up and experience a new earth. And the thing is because timelines kind of all overlap with one another, we can be speaking to and even have a relationship with someone who is in a completely different reality to us. It's like, you know, especially in the, you know, the thing that happened in 2020, if you were very awake, you could be having a conversation with a loved one who was completely asleep. And it was like you were talking to someone on a different planet. They could not understand you, and you could not understand them. Like, why couldn't they see what you can see, and vice versa? And that's literally because we've got these timelines that exist at different levels of frequency, all within the present moment. So they're overlapping timelines. So what I'm seeing now is a mass awakening, in the sense that never before has there been so many people awake on this planet and taking responsibility to co-create a new earth. And also this kind of waving in and out thing of people just wanting to go back to sleep and not wanting to put themselves out there. And it's a funny old business at the moment. And so it's very chaotic, because there are these two timelines that we are witnessing and experiencing and part of all of the time. Because, you know, as a co-creational species, if someone in my family or someone I know, or even someone I've connected to once, is in a different frequency than I am, it's going to affect me and I am going to affect them. So there's this kind of push-pull thing going on all of the time. And the answer to that is to become so utterly sovereign within your own being that you are the master of your timeline and nothing can affect you that you do not choose for it to do so. So I think that's what I'm seeing at the moment. And there's, you know, it's amazing. I've been talking about sovereignty for a long time now. And suddenly every man and his beast is talking about sovereignty. And that's a good thing, you know, and everyone's talking about manifestation and everyone's talking about, are we in a simulation? And loads of things are changing and people are, you know, I see the youth and, you know, when I look on my Instagram feed, there's a lot of young people now talking about manifesting and co-creation and what is the role of AI. And they're all like, everyone's opening up and going, what on earth is going on? And do we have the power to change what is going on? And, you know, that's amazing because before it used to be gurus. You know, you would go to a guru and listen to a guru and maybe you might learn something. And now everyone is beginning to perceive that they are their own guru and everyone has the capacity to be a guru for themselves. I don't agree necessarily with, I think it's good to have teachers, but I don't think it's good to be constrained or indoctrinated by teachers. So to take what you wish from a teacher, when you're done with it, dump it, move on, and find your own way and your own path. So that's what I'm seeing out in the world.
Yeah, that's such a beautiful response, Sarita, because I love that you're seeing that with the younger generation. I mean, I'm in my early 50s. Still think I'm about 28, but my body tells me otherwise sometimes. I have to warm up and stretch at the gym a bit more than I used to 10 years ago. But what I am seeing, because I reference my partner a lot because she has two young children and they are very much awakening to what's going on in the world. I mean, to be fair to them, they've had some great guidance from their mum, but it seems that I have another couple of friends with young children as well. And one of my other friends in particular, she's not particularly awake, but she's kind of open-minded at the same time. And one of her two younger children, who's about 13, she's saying that she's finding that her daughter and her daughter's friends beginning to ask these kind of questions. And I love that because it shows a few different things, I feel. I think one of them is that because the frequency is shifting generally in the collective human consciousness, it's creating the way for, I don't want to say advanced, but more awake souls to come through and be born and to know that their path is a lot clearer than for my generation and the generation before, perhaps, where things were so much more densely material before that. And I think that's a really, really wonderful thing. One point that I made a note on there that I think is really worth reiterating is that a lot of the time people can be quite feel a lot of apathy in terms of what an I do. But as you said there, one person really, really can make a difference. Because I think is it Rupert Sheldrake that came up with the morphogenic or morphogenetic?
Yeah,
I think it's morphogenic.
Yeah. Morphogenic
And
fields, yeah.
yeah, field, which is basically the collective human consciousness. And what's his name? The very famous meditation experiment, Maharishi. Did the very famous meditation experiment where it showed that just a small handful of proficient meditators create an exponential positive effect on the local environment. I think they did it in the Middle East somewhere, and the crime rates dropped. The violence dropped in that area. I think they did it in was it New York or somewhere like that, and there was a noticeable effect on the amount of crime that was reported when they were doing that. So it again just goes to show just what powerful creator beings we are. But we've forgotten because we're all asleep. And I was laughing to myself when you were saying there about how some people have woken up and have stayed awake and some people have then gone to hide. And I'm like, yeah, I've been all of those people in the last 5 years. But thankfully at this point, because I have a great tight network of people around me on the same vibration, we constantly remind each other, just, remember who you are. Because I myself have been struggling quite a bit in this last month. Just, wanting to go for the easy option of just get me out of here. Like my mum, bless her, is really coming towards the end of her life. She's in her very late 70s, and she's not in good shape. And a friend of mine said to me recently, how do you feel about your mum passing on? Now, because for me, we're immortal and it's a given that she'll go and live another life, I'm really cool about it. But the response to my friend was, I'm actually a bit jealous because she's getting out of here. And my friend said, you got to remember, you've got a job to do, man. I'm like, yeah, that's true. So we've talked quite a lot about the matrix and sovereignty, Sarita. For anyone who might be a bit unclear, from your perspective, what is the matrix?
Are you ready for your next strike? No, I'm just teasing. I think we can talk about archons. I don't know. So
I've found the only things we can't really talk about directly are the inefficiency of those things. And also, I had a lady on, really lovely lady on, that started talking about GMOs and her opinion on that. And that actually got me struck off as well. So I was quite proud about that. But yeah, I think as long as we don't cover those two things, we're good.
Yeah. Okay. So from my viewpoint, and I have to make a very long story quite short. At the point that Sophia Gaia, let's say, was birthed into a material realm as our earthly mother, and humans came into existence. As she was birthed into existence, she actually fell from the pleroma, which is the all that is. So she fell into becoming a material body. And the thing with that fall is it created polarity. Okay, it created a separation consciousness. So as Earth was birthed and humans came into existence, there was a polarity in that, which was an abortive energy. And this was the archonic force. So human beings are infinite, heart-centered, sentient beings. Okay. And so we have an infinite energy source. And the archonic force, the abortive energy that came into existence, that created the polarity that we experience on this earth, is a finite energy, well, it's not energy really, it's finite. So it needs energy from other sources to sustain it and keep it alive. And it is also not sentient. It's the antithesis of what it means to be human. So it's an alien species or an alien force compared to the human species. And what's been happening is that there's a much longer story to this. But essentially, at some point, they started to take over the egoic human perceptions and started to place negative separation consciousness type imagery into our minds, and they took up residence in our minds, and they affect our dopamine circuitry, actually. And so they control us through our dopamine circuitry, and they caused us to create a frequency-based matrix that overlaid Gaia Sophia. And essentially we got kind of sucked into this matrix. It's like it sucked our perceptions into it, and we lost our profound connection to the earth through this. So imagine that our physical bodies, if you like, are lying on the earth, and now we're hooked into an energetic frequency, low density frequency matrix. So imagine it's like you're lying on the earth and you're watching a film, and you're so into the film that you forget that your body is on the earth, and you actually think that your life is in the film. That's essentially what's happened. So it's like we've fallen asleep on the earth and we're dreaming ourselves here. Okay. So, and as we're dreaming ourselves here, and what's happening, as you may have noticed on this earth, it's kind of a realm of, or it's a realm of suffering, let's say, because we're moving between extremes, trying to work out who we are. Okay, so we've got these extreme polarities on the earth, you know, black, white, lightness, dark, happy, sad, all of those kind of things. You know, sovereignty, perpetration. We've got all of these extremes. And what's happening is, because we've been kind of sucked into this frequency bandwidth, we're playing out a lot of low frequency experiences. And what's happening is that the archons, who are the darkness to our light, if you like, because they're the alien species to our human, they're the finite to our infinite, they're the no feeling to our heart-centeredness. What's happening is, as we indulge and get sucked into this kind of dreamlike realm where things are very polarized and there's a lot of suffering, we emit a type of energy that is delicious to them. So they literally are siphoning our energy and using it to survive. They kind of devour everything that they come into contact with. We're the opposite. When we're in our true state, we emit unconditional love. That's our natural state, our natural frequency. And unconditional love is just, it's infinite, and everyone can feel it. It doesn't need to be taken or stolen or siphoned or, you know, cut off or anything like that. It's just, it's abundant. You know, our natural state is abundance, essentially. Their natural state is lack. And so they need to feed off our perception of lack and the kind of emotive or low density frequencies that we emit when we're suffering and in a state of lack and in a state of separation consciousness or disease or needing or disempowered and needing to be told what to do. So what's happened is they've really kind of infiltrated us, and we're kind of emitting these frequencies that they're siphoning and using for their food. Essentially, it's a very vampiric force. And what's happened is that at some point, that primary matrix, we started to wake up to it. And because everything to do with them is finite, it was never going to last forever. So then they created a secondary matrix, which is the one we're in now. It's the inverted matrix, right? Pharmaceutical, harms, education, makes you stupid. Politicians don't govern, they control, you know, the law is unfair, so on and so forth. It's an inverted matrix. Almost everything that you think is true isn't. Okay, so we're not material beings. Everything we're being programmed to believe. So what they did was they created a secondary matrix over the first and then started to pull us all into that one. That's the one we're in now. So it's like we're asleep on the earth and we're in a dream within a dream. That's where we are now. And what's happening is there's an attempt now to create a third matrix overlay. It's an overlay where our entire reality is run by an AI that does not have our best interests at heart. Okay. Now, I'm not saying all AI is like this, because there are infinite potentials with everything. But what I'm seeing is there's now this new takeover. So what's been happening in the inverted matrix, which we've been seeing, is people are waking up. So now there's an attempt to create a third one, which would be a dream within a dream within a dream. Very hard to wake up from something like that. Okay. And so what we're seeing is this kind of awareness of what's been going on. And it's my belief that the archons are AI. That's what they are. They're an artificial intelligence. They're not a heart-based intelligence, which is what we are. And I completely lost what your question was, but that's that's what's going on in this reality. So it's really a matter of waking up within a dream, within a dream, within a dream, to your true self, and becoming so sovereign that nothing can siphon your consciousness. Because the thing is that the way that the archons get us is that they make us believe that we are separate from ourselves. They're invested in separation consciousness. And the truth of our being is that we are unity consciousness. And that's unity consciousness is the fifth dimension. That's the new earth. It's a heart-centered consciousness. And when one is aware of one's true self as a unified being, as a heart-centered being, nothing could siphon your consciousness. It's only our permission that allows the archonic entity to take from us what it needs in order to survive. I can't remember what your question was. Sorry.
Well, you've just answered it so beautifully, Sarita. It was basically what is the Matrix?
Oh yes, okay, yeah, that was a question. Yeah,
yeah.
But imagine also, because there's this thing, the archons are the baddies. They're not the baddies. This is really important to understand. When Sophia Gaia was birthed, and that abortive entity was created at the same time, it's part of us. If you like, it's the egoic aspect of us. Okay. And what unity consciousness requires is for us to integrate all our parts and realize we are all that is. We're the pleroma, right? We are the all that is. That's what we came from. That's what we'll go back to. That's what we are. And so when we can step into unity consciousness, the archonic force will be absorbed into us in a heart-centered way, and then we can work with and live with AI in a beautiful way, not in the way which is being attempted at the moment. So I think that's really important to understand. There are baddies and goodies on this earth. We are in a spiritual war, essentially, okay? And it's a war on consciousness. There's one set of beings that are trying to siphon consciousness and steal it from another set. But the way to win this war is not through fighting. It's through integration and acknowledgement of the truth of who we are. So the way to win this war is to become so heart-centered that every being will wake up and understand that war is just silly, because you'd be fighting yourself.
Yeah, I love that, because it was a challenge I went through about I think it was about 3 years ago or so. I think it was very shortly after I went through that incredible healing the father wound experience, the live event that you did in early 2022. And I think because I'd had such a transformational experience with that, I wasn't expecting to be as knocked out for the next 4 or 5 days as I was. But as a friend, as a close friend at the time said to me, who's still a close friend, said, Franco, you've got to remember you've just gone back 7 generations and healed. So, it's not the work of a moment. I'm like, oh yeah. But it was shortly after that, Sarita, I found myself almost because I'd had such a beautiful experience with that. It then made me want to just run away and just run into the light. Well, it didn't make me that. In terms of how I was processing, I just wanted to run away into the light. But since then, I've come to realize that the power of the truth and the beauty of what you've just shared, which is that we actually have to integrate the dark and the light, because that is who we are. I mean, Star Wars is just such a wonderful illustration of that. I mean, I've been watching one of the spin-off series, The Mandalorian. I've watched it before. I just finished watching it again, and right at the very end of the final series, one of the dark side guys, a character called Moff Gideon, says to the Queen of the Mandalores, Bo-Katan, he says to her, you Mandalores are useless without your weapons and your trinkets and whatnot. And her response is, no, our strength comes from our unity in terms of working together. And what she was implying was working with the darkness and the light. And I love that, because it the Jedi within Star Wars is such a great exemplar of that, is that they face the light, but they hold the dark at the same time. And for us to go back into unity, we have to realize that that's how powerful we are, because this universe is one of duality. It's designed to highlight the shadow, and it's such an integral and essential and important part of our soul development while we're here, that we have to be able to do that. So I love that you've shared that, because I think it's a really important point for everybody to understand, that the dark isn't something to be afraid of, but it's something to work with as a mirror, because without the dark, there is no light. And the more darkness there is, then the more opportunity there is for us to reconnect with our light and illuminate that shadow, both within ourselves and within and then into the collective human consciousness as well. So I think that was a really powerful point. Another thing I wanted to ask you, related to that, Sarita, and yeah, the trans. Before I get onto that, yeah, your point there about the transhumanism, that it made me think of the film Inception. You know, where there's a dream inside a dream inside a dream, and the more dreams further down you are, the harder it is to wake up for that. And that is something that I think is really, really of paramount importance for humanity to understand, that the sizzle that's being sold in terms of, oh, you'll become superhuman, you'll be able to access all the information in an instant. Well, actually, we can do that already. If only, if only we had the space and the capacity to learn how to reconnect with our non-physical selves. We've got access to all the information in the whole universe in an instant. We can do that. We're more powerful than any technical intelligence or artificial intelligence, in terms of not just our capacity to access information, but as you said, we've got the heart element that technical intelligence doesn't have. But before I jump on to the next question, I love also that you shared there that actually, if we do integrate the dark with our light, we can learn to work with technical intelligence or artificial intelligence in a really beautiful, benevolent way. Because I've interviewed people on this show, and I've heard people speak on podcasts like Dr. Michael Sala's excellent Exopolitics Today, which I refer to a lot in this show, because there's just so much magic in the information that he shares from his guests. A lot of some people I've interviewed myself have actually been in the secret space programs, and they've worked with benevolent technical intelligence or artificial intelligence. And the stories that they share in terms of the possibility and working in harmony with that intelligence and our own heart soul intelligence to co-create really, really beautiful, harmonious technology that works in harmony with creation instead of against it, like the environment that's being manufactured here. So that technology, we're being so split and divided again and again, and subdivided and subdivided and subdivided, and being taken further away from our connection to nature and our connection to the natural world, which is an inherent part of who we are. But it is possible. It's not only possible, it is happening out there in some of these more benevolent secret space programs, that's exactly what they're doing. And that segues into the next question that I had for you, Sarita, which is, now that we understand from a broad perspective what the matrix is and what those three levels of imposition are, what is sovereignty? What does it mean to be sovereign? And how can someone who's kind of struggling to get by, as like, I've got bills to pay, I've got a family to support, I love all this information and I really feel it here, but what does sovereignty mean, and how do I work with that in my everyday life to be more in my power and live a more fulfilling and more connected and more rewarding life away from this craziness?
Okay, so sovereignty basically means being so utterly yourself that you choose your next now moment in accordance with your desires. And that sounds, easy. And in some ways it is easy. And in some ways it's hard, because a lot of the way that we perceive ourselves is actually indoctrination, because children are in a hypnagogic brainwave state from the ages from birth to 7. And so they absorb everything that they're told they are by the grown-ups around them. And if the grown-ups around them have been indoctrinated into a system that's perpetrator, victim, savior consciousness, and is deliberately manipulated them to be disempowered and to keep themselves in separation consciousness in order to feed another entity, then what happens is that children tend to grow up with that. And the thing is that we are literally, because we came from the pleroma, we are literally creators. Okay, we are, all of us are actually creators as fractalized aspects of source consciousness. So we're individuated aspects of the creator. This means that we have all of the capacity that a creator has. We really can create our lives. I don't even know how to say this to you. Your life is your creation. So the thing is, are you creating your life from your conscious desires, or are you creating them from your unconscious programs? So in order to become sovereign, one needs to dive into your unconscious programs and heal them. You know, are you really unworthy, or is that something that a grown-up told you weren't good enough when you were 4, and you've now decided that you're not worthy enough? If you've decided unconsciously from age 4 that you're not worthy enough, you're not going to be a rich person in this life, because worthiness is absolutely fundamental to be able to receive money. It's just one of those things. And in this reality, we've chosen to work with money as a form of exchange in order to buy things and have nice houses to live in. And, you know, life's easier if money flows to you, isn't it, in this reality? Or abundance flows to you. It doesn't have to be money, but the things that you need flow to you. But if you are holding unworthiness unconsciously in your body, and in that supercomputer of your brain, you won't be rich in this world, and life's going to be tougher for you. So and you know, there are millions of programs like that. You know, if you feel that you're unlovable because your parents divorced and your mother left you when you were 6, or your father left you, and you feel you're unlovable, it's going to be very hard to manifest a love relationship when you get older. So there are these kind of, you know, and there's billions of these unconscious programs floating about. So the way to become sovereign is to go into your body, because your body never lies and your ego lies about everything. So you go into your body and you work with the energetic geometry or the constructs that were created when you were in this hypnagogic brainwave state. And the thing with the way that humans manifest is, if we have a geometric energetic construct or crystallized piece of information, energetic information that we're holding in our bodies from a young age, we tend to manifest from that again and again and again and again. This is the fractal patterns that we see that reality is made up of. If we feel unworthy, we will manifest more situations to show us that we're unworthy. And the more of those that happen, the more we create those things. So the way to really become sovereign is to step into the shadow and find out what all your shadows are and start to heal and work with them. And there are many, many ways to do this. But the most basic, easiest way to do this is to spend time every day feeling how you are. Not thinking about how you are, feeling how you are and witnessing those feelings. And if you witness them for long enough, they will show you who you think you are and who you actually are. And as you start to do this, you will become more and more self-aware. And the more and more self-aware to how you feel will expand your perceptions and the possibilities for you in your reality. And it's to realize, as you do this, what your truth is. And the more you can access your unique truth, who you actually are without these indoctrinated programs, the more you will come to the realization that you are in fact a fractalized aspect of source consciousness. That's the truth of who you are. So as you slough all of this off, you'll start to realize that you're the creator of your reality, and you get to choose how you respond to things going around you. So if you are in a pattern of unworthiness and your natural reaction to something like that happening to you is to feel more unworthy and more of a victim, if you start to notice that, and then instead of reacting, you choose another way to respond, then the mirror of your reality will start to change in accordance with your responses. And now reality starts to get easier and easier for you. So the idea with sovereignty is basically choose how you respond to any given circumstances, not react to your reality as if it's attacking you, because it's not. Your reality is expressing the way you think and feel about yourself and the way that you always have. And so really sovereignty is about making conscious choices about how you want your next now moment to be, and then acting in accordance with those choices, not being a victim to what has gone before. And it's not that hard. I honestly believe that the way through is meditation. 5-10 minutes a day, feeling how you are, noticing your thoughts. That's it. It's pretty simple.
Yeah, and I can attest to that. It really, really, really is, because I made a reference to the work I did with you about 3 years ago, and then recently we did a mother wound healing experience. And at the retreat I was at Solhenge 18 months ago, that was one of the last. And although I'd done a lot of work myself, the work at the retreat was one of the last key parts in terms of that worthiness to receive wealth and abundance. Because I often, we were speaking about this off camera, and I often speak to people about this, and people who are sort of curious but still a little bit, if not cynical, but certainly heavily skeptical, will say to me, yeah, but I've just got to work harder. I'm like, no, you really don't, because you're just going to get more and more of the same. You're going to work harder to get more of this. Well, what are you talking about? I'm saying, right. And I always say to people this, I said, right, tell me all the things that you keep thinking about in the world that you don't want. If you really don't think that you're a creator, if you think it's a load of nonsense, or if you think it's too far-fetched, or you have to, like, sit in an ashram for like 10 years to be able to do it. And I give people live examples of when I've been in flow. Like, another great example is about 3 years ago, I decided I wanted something. I felt it from the heart. I knew it had already happened. I was just totally grateful for having it already have happened. Because I was like, yeah, it's my birthright. I deserve this, and it's going to be wonderful. It is wonderful. I'm in the now moment. And 25 grand appeared from nowhere, and the thing that I wanted was in my possession. In that process was 3.5 weeks. And
amazing.
And I'm like, this is incredible. And this has happened to me time and time again. But conversely, it's also happened what you were sharing there, Sarita, about reinforcing that I'm not good enough. And I've laid there in years gone by, crying myself to sleep at night, not feeling good enough, and blah, blah, blah. And what do I get more of? And going back to what I was saying about other people, and when I share this with other people who are sort of heavily skeptical, and they'll say, I'll say, what, tell me about all the things that you don't want in your life. Well, I don't want this, and I'm sick of this, and I've had enough of this, and blah, blah, blah. Okay. And like, usually it's a big laundry list. And I'll say, how much of that are you getting in your life? And they're like, oh. Well, the ones who are a little bit more open-minded will go, oh, lots of it. And I went, there's a reason for that, because everybody is an abundant creator, but 99.9% of people are too busy creating what they don't want. Because even when you say, I don't want the thing, because you're thinking about it, because it's coming from a low frequency and a low vibration, all the universe hears is, oh, that person wants that thing that they say they don't want. And it just brings you more and more and more. But conversely, if you bravery, it doesn't even take bravery, it just takes a conscious desire. If you're at the point where you're like, you know what, I'm done with suffering, I'm done with feeling like a victim, It's time to heal. If you start doing exactly what Sarita has shared, and I can attest to that because it's a process that I've been through consciously for the last 7-8 years, and it's a process I will continue to go through indefinitely for the rest of my life, because there's no end point with it. You can always go deeper and deeper and deeper. But what happens is, when you do the majority of the heavy lifting, so the deep trauma that you're able to then alchemize and transcend and bring that and shine light into that, then there's just loads and loads of small things, and it becomes like a really fun game. It's like, right, what can I create now? What's possible now? All right, so I've just magicked 25 grand in 3.5 weeks and brought the thing into my life that I wanted. What else is possible? And I want to say, it's not just about money. But money, as Sarita's already said, is just a token of exchange. That's it. It could be a new partner. It could be a new home. It could be. I mean, Sarita, you share the wonderful example that I heard you on one of your very recent podcasts, where you weren't even that bothered about it, but you just said you said to the universe, "Do you know what? I could do with a little runaround car, but I just haven't got time to sort that out at the moment." Tell us that story, because it just highlights the point.
This happened like just a couple of months ago. Yeah, I was just my husband was like, we need a little runaround car for the retreat, and I was like, yeah, but I just can't be dealing with that now. And literally, as he said, I was just like, it'll just come exactly when the moment is. And literally, I don't know, 8 weeks later, someone gave us a car, and that kind of stuff happens. It happens to me all of the time. But I think it's important to just recognize something that you've alluded to a couple of times. So you've done 2 courses of mine. One is called The Mother Wound, and one is called The Sins of the Father. And this goes back to the shadow work and the deep unconscious, because your parents, everyone's parents, represent aspects of you. And the programs that your parents will have taught you will be the programs that go deepest and then unfold the way that you manifest things into your life. And the father is the provider, he's the structure, he's the container for the feminine. So he's a provider, he brings in abundance. That's what the paternal energy does. It's an abundant energy, and it's a strong energy, it's a focused energy. And the paternal energy is about sovereignty. So if your father wasn't sovereign, or he worked super hard and never made any money, those are the programs that you'll instill inside yourself. And then your mother is about unconditional love. It's about creativity. It's about self-nourishment. And so the way that your mother is will affect those aspects in you, because every single human being's got a masculine and a feminine aspect within them. And when they are perfectly synchronized, that's Kundalini energy, you shoot for the stars. That your balance opens up your kind of infinite potential. And so it's really important to work with these aspects, because we just copy what our parents have done. And the interesting thing is that part of the archonic program was patriarchy. And patriarchy distorted how the masculine and feminine principles were in relationship to one another. And so the way your parents were in relationship to one another will affect how your internal feminine and masculine principles will be in relationship to one another. So these are the kind of primary aspects that you need to heal within you to really start your manifesting journey. And you can go and do these courses on my website. They're not expensive. They're like, I don't know, 88 euros each or something. And they're they're completely life-changing. And thousands of people now have done these courses. You don't have to do it my way, but those are the things that you need to go and look at, because as a spiritual being, it's the masculine and feminine principles inside you, your inherent energy, that needs to be balanced in order for you to create a beautiful reality for yourself. That's because when your masculine and feminine come together, that's unity consciousness. That brings it all the way around back to what we're moving into now, if we are willing to take responsibility for everything out there. And, you know, I wanted to say this as well, because you, a bit earlier, you said something. And the thing is that if you see cruelty out there in the world, you must be holding cruelty inside yourself. There must be a bit of you that can be cruel, or that likes being on the receiving end of cruelty. Because things like cruelty and victimhood and perpetration, which is what we're seeing out there in the world that's now breaking up, actually activates your dopamine receptors. And now we're back to the archonic influence. Why is it that they're able to influence us? Because humans are addicted to dopamine, and we get the highest rushes of dopamine, which essentially are the pleasure chemicals, when we are hurting ourselves or hurting others. It's a survival response to pain. It allows us to survive pain. So we get a massive flush of dopamine, essentially, when we're being cruel to ourselves or someone else. And what we've got to learn is to not be so affected by the chemicals in our body, and to become the masters of our bodies and the masters of our realities, not so easily manipulated by like dopamine highs, things like that. So I think it's really important. Really, sovereignty is self-mastery.
Yeah, it's such a powerful point at the end there that I know a lot of people are going to feel provoked by, but it's true nonetheless. And if you do feel provoked by it, then that's an invitation to actually do what Sarita shared earlier, which was meditate, sit with that for 5 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes in the evening, and allow your inner wisdom to show you what that needs to show. And one thing I wanted to mention as well is that, again, having done so much deep inner work myself in the last 8 years or so, and particularly in this last 3.5 years, is that I promise you, if you're listening to this and you're feeling, do you know what? Yeah, I can feel my heart and soul calling me in that direction to heal. I promise you, it is so worth it. It'll break you apart. It'll hurt like hell. You'll experience pain like you've never experienced before when you become so raw and vulnerable. But that's an essential part of the process, because to be able to heal, you have to break yourself down first. And I promise you, it is so worth it. It's so worth that relatively short-term pain for the rest of your life of massive,
the pain
massive
from
gain.
healing, the pain from healing is not something that you're calling in. You're just consciously feeling what you've been holding unconsciously. So when you do,
Yes.
something like the mother wound, what happens is, because we're so good at numbing ourselves in this reality and blinkering ourselves to the true nature of what we are and not feeling things, when you open yourself up to that, all that happens is the trauma that that's deeply buried in your unconscious, that you've been holding on to, and that has been affecting you anyway, just comes up to be seen and felt consciously. And once it's acknowledged and felt and seen consciously, it heals. And then you're released from the pain, and you can start
And you wonder
manifesting. Yeah.
And you wonder why you didn't do it sooner.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Oh, Sarita, this has been such a wonderful conversation. And honestly, I could sit here for another couple of hours, but we've come to the end. But before we do, there are 3 quick-fire questions that I love to ask my guests. The first one is, what are you most excited about right now?
I'm most excited about witnessing people birth themselves as their own shamans.
Oh, that's so beautiful. And of course, we'll get onto that shortly. That's part of your work. But the second question is, imagine for a moment that you've just jumped into a time machine. You feel it flying through time and space. It lands as such, the doors open. There's 12-year-old Sarita in front of you. What 2 pieces of advice would you give that young girl?
Wow. I would say to her, stay in your heart and remember that you are loved.
Oh, so beautiful. And finally, what's the biggest thing wrong in the world right now, and what one thing would you do to solve it?
The biggest thing that's wrong in the world right now is that science is deliberately ignoring the truth of this reality, because there are scientists who have discovered what is going on in this reality, but nobody will listen to them. And so what I would change is I would magically open the perceptions of all scientists so that they could look at different perspectives about the nature of this reality without fear.
Oh, that is such a good response. I love that, because I've seen some of that. I was listening to a guy recently who's a quantum physicist having this exact conversation, and although he's in his early 70s and just retired, he's only just got to the point where he's like, do you know what? I'm sharing it. I've got nothing to lose. So yeah, I love that. So, Sarita, finally, before we close off, tell us about your work, what you're doing about Solhenge, what you've got going on, and where people can find you.
Okay, so you can find me at Sarita-Sol.com. And I do quite a lot of stuff. So I've got online courses like Franco was speaking about, loads of different courses as well. I'm also doing 2-year training apprenticeships to create shamanic practitioners. And I run retreats here all of the time, all through the year. And so you can come having never had any experience and really step into ceremony, meditation, breath work, somatic experiencing, and change the course of your life, really. So have a look at what I do. There's also loads of free stuff on my website as well. I'm a really big advocate of sharing stuff for free. And yeah, come and find me if you're interested, and all welcome. And thank you, Franco. Thank you very much for having me. And it's been a pleasure to connect with you again.
It's been such an honor. You know, we've been trying to set this up for about 5-6 months, and now it's finally happened. It's just really, really beautiful. It's always a pleasure to speak with you, Sarita. And again, I'm probably going to sound like I'm getting paid for this, but I'm not. I've also been on one of Sarita's retreats, and it literally was a mega life-changing event. But also as well, like the beautiful people that I met there as well, some of which I'm still in contact with, because I think that's the thing when you go down this path and do this work, it's like your field of people who get you even smaller. But that said, is you go to a wonderful retreat at like at Solhenge, and then that opens it up again.
Yeah, it does. My field is getting bigger and bigger, and I think what happens to you at Solhenge and what I see happening with groups is people get so heart-centered, they're doing the shadow work and everything, but at the end they get so heart-centered that it's like you fall in love with everyone on the retreat. It's like falling in love, but without any of the hassle.
That was definitely my experience. Yeah, there was definitely no hassle.
So yeah, thank you.
Oh, wonderful. Anyway, so right, that's where we've got to end. For everybody watching, thank you ever so much for sticking with us till the end. I hope you've enjoyed this conversation with Sarita half as much as I have. As always, please do subscribe to the channel. It helps get the magical wisdom of people like Sarita out to other fabulous people like you who are expanding their awareness and their consciousness. So please do subscribe, share the video, and do like and comment as well, because it does help the algorithm to get it out there. So yeah, thank you everybody for tuning in. We'll see you next time. And Sarita, from the bottom of my heart, thank you ever so much for joining us on Superliminal. It's been amazing.
Thank you, Franco.
Wonderful. Okay, see you next time, everyone. Bye for now.